One of the interesting things about dissecting a lot of branches of really good ancient metaphysics is being able to synthesize everything very, very simply, such that not only you understand it, but that other people understand it. There's this old Sanskrit saying, Tat Tvamasi, meaning that thou art. And that would, of course, would be with a capital T, meaning the absolute. The word Tathagata is basically the same thing. It means agata is past tense, means you've arrived at your destination, and you've arrived at Tat, capital T again, just the same as Tattvam Asi. So the word Tathagata means you have arrived at that, the apex, the absolute. But what arrives there? You know, it is not the psychophysical. You can no more polish a turd, and don't take that too literally. I know about the Mythbusters, polishing a handful of poo. That's taking the analogy too far. You can't polish poo any more than you could pass a camel through the eye of a needle, nor could you talk about or enjoin something as ludicrous as empirical purification. That's completely ridiculous. It's good to be healthy, and of course it's good to keep your car clean and in great working order, but the goal is not to keep your car clean. And this, of course, is where morality trips so many people up. They say, it's about being pure, not having any bad thoughts. And it's like, no, that's not it. Once you reach the other shore, you obviously don't need the raft or the boat anymore. And people worry about existential purity. It's ridiculous. You can't purify that which is by its very nature vile, has a beginning in time, and therefore an end in time. It's not anything that it can attain to that which the ancient Greeks and Egyptians and others, the Indians, original Buddhism, Advaita Vedanta, the Upanishads, there's no talk of empirical purification. It's completely ludicrous to even think about something like that. There's a saying of the dead man walking, and the dead man walking doesn't mean like somebody's in danger of, passing away tomorrow, as a lot of people ideate it. It's a metaphysical appellation. As somebody that is still embodied, but the signal, if you will, for lack of a better analogy, the Spiritus Sancta, no longer has identification with that. And this is the only way wisdom manifests. Wisdom starts to manifest in people through which the death is starting to occur. And by death, I don't mean physical death. I mean the death of identity. Because life, of course, all life ends, obviously so. The death that occurs gradually and once ultimately must be fulfilled is the identification with that. People get jaded in their old age because they've kind of experienced it all and seen it all. We know this. I mean, that's a different kind of death, but there's no disjoining with that thing that you actually see in the mirror. The Pali word for this, the dead man walking, is akim kana, which literally means a non-person. Now, there's a reason why the so-called Buddha, is never depicted as a psychophysical creature with arms and legs and so on and so forth in ancient iconography, Buddhist iconography, like the Sanchi Top. Everything before like the 2nd century BCE shows it as a pillar of fire. There's the Buddhapada, which is a footprint with a wheel in the center, meaning that the person is not a person. Purisha. Purisha doesn't mean person. There's a being, and there's a Mahapurisha. The Mahapurisha is no different than saying Buddha or Tathagata, for example, meaning the great spirit. It doesn't mean a great person, because there's no purification of the psychophysical. All those yellow-robed guys running around India, Laos, Thailand, Sri Lanka, they're all soul deniers, by the way. But I'm uninterested in the stuff that they talk about. You say, well, that's Buddhists. It's like, well, in name only they are. What the original actually teaches is something entirely different. There are, of course, two selves spoken of by the Egyptians, the Upanishads, the Vedas, Rig Veda, Samaveda, Arthura Veda, Dignike, Majjhimike, and Gotarnake, Kudakanake, Samyuranake. Every branch of genuine, pure, simple metaphysics speak of two selves. Plato talks about the two selves. I can't remember the passages offhand. I should remember that in Plato's works. The psychophysical self and the transcendent self. Yes? That thing you see in the mirror, the psychophysical, Rupa Vedana Sama Sankara, i.e. the corporeal heap. There is no such thing as purification thereof. It is completely 1000% insane, absurd, and illogical, and impossible to talk about empirical purification. It's just completely ridiculous. Think about this, because wisdom and the self are one and the same thing. For the light of wisdom, like you can't see light, you can't see into like one of the cars that have heavily tinted windows, right? You like look, somebody's a bad driver, and it's like, oh man, I can't see them. The windows are heavily tinted. The light of wisdom never shines through the ignorance of a person that identifies with and as and in love with that thing that you see in the mirror. Wisdom and the self are one and the same thing from the aspect, as not my opinion at all, from the aspect of ancient metaphysics, true ancient metaphysics. And the removal of that occlusion is, of course, self-proximity, because once again, nobody ever purifies gold. Gold has never, ever, in the history of all time and creation, been purified. It's extraction. We're going to purify gold. No, gold is gold is gold. It's extraction. Yeah, you never see a lot of host rock, like lead mining, for example. You take the lead matrix out, or the silver matrix. Like, I don't see any silver here. This is a silver mine. I've been to a silver mine before. It's like, you don't see the silver? It's like, look at this. I don't see any silver. You might see like a tiny fleck of it. And it has to be processed. That extraction, of course, you're like, oh, look at the beautiful gold and silver now. Well, it's never purified as extracted. The way the light of wisdom shines through is that all the things that occlude one, the false identity, the primordial agnosis, occludes that which is most pure, which brings one to self-proximity. Self-proximity, of course, in talking about transcendence, or liberation, i.e. vimutta, obviously and logically so, are one and the same thing. Necessitatively, it cannot even exist in any other way. Every metaphysics talks about two selves. As long as the false desire, embodiment thereof, identification with and as, this of course is an identification phenomenology. Why does anybody like laugh or cry at a movie? You're not in the movie is not touching you, yet we identify that. And that's how people get a thrill when they go to the movies, for example. Like, why are you crying? You know, someone might be watching a sad movie. It's like, why are they crying? They're not in the movie. They're not part of the movie. Well, they go to the movie for an experience, like a roller coaster ride. For a short period of time, they identify with whoever or whatever's in the movie, and they'll cry or be happy or whatever. This is no different than the agnosis that occurs of every living being regarding the existential self. As long as the existential self is strong, then there is little to no wisdom. No wisdom shines through. Nobody sees gold or silver in a matrix rock, usually. It's like, well, I don't get it. It's like, this is a silver mine, produces a lot of silver or gold, for example. I don't get it, I don't see anything. It's like, well, it has to be processed. All this other garbage out here, synonymously, has to be removed. And then the silver will be readily apparent. The silver is right there. You can't see it, but it's right there. Well, the wisdom is right there, but there is no wisdom that shines through. People are, you know, like the turd in the punch bowl, or it's just, everybody is occluded. The occlusion that corrupts and destroys any possible manifestation of wisdom is the same thing that separates one from what anybody would call vimutta, liberation or transcendence, or seeing the light of what truly is, you know, seeing natural order, seeing how, you know, the system of the universe works, natura naturans, to be able to differentiate with and not identify with that thing that you see in the mirror. These are the people that have died to the mere self. I hate to use the word guru or master. I don't believe in using those garbage words. Anybody that actually shines refulgently, there's a great word, refulgent, refulgently of wisdom and truth, is somebody that has wiped away the false identity. I'm Bob and Sue, you know, I'm so-and-so years old, and I'm masculine, and I work at, you know, just all these things that we identify with. And we think that's who we are. I mean, that keeps the light of wisdom from shining through not only to others, but to ourselves. We have no self-clarity. And we're just, you know, if you had a big rock in your hand that say like 30 ounces of gold in it, You know, until the gold is extracted, you got nothing other than a big freaking rock. What is potential is not actual. Nobody has free will either until it is actualized. An acorn, for example, not that this is an acorn, is no different genetically than an oak tree. But what is potential is not actual. You can't get any lumber out of an acorn, can you? No. Well, I don't see why not. An acorn's genetically identical to an oak tree. You should be able to get some lumber out. It's like, no, you can't. Because an acorn is sheer, pure potential. Yes? It is not actualized. You might have $1 billion of gold under your feet, but unless it's actualized, you're none the richer, of course. Wisdom is ever present. The true self, the transcendent self, or the self of the large S, is ever present. But you have to ask yourself, what is the pure potential which is unactualized? How do I actually access it? If it's right there, like, why can't I access it? Why can't I actually partake of it? It's because the false identity that is fed and perpetuated, and it is fed. Like me, I'm fat, right? I'm fed too much. We're feeding the fire of that ignorance, which includes wisdom and our own ability to see things very, very clearly. This is the reason why there's so much evil in the world and the rest of it. False identities, primordial agnosis, desires, corrupt wills, and this is all due to the lack of wisdom. Laws and government only exist because people are evil and corrupt and full of desires and hate. We would have no need for laws or government if people had a half a spirit of wisdom. They only exist there because of stupid people and evil desires. By the way, all those little statues you see in Southeast Asia, China, it's like, there's a Buddha statue. You know, you see them everywhere. The little Buddha. There's the reason why before the 2nd century BCE there were never any psychophysical depictions of the Buddha, because such an entity is Akimkana, a non-person, literally. There is no such thing as a psychophysical being with arms and legs that is either a Tathagata or what we would call the Buddha. That's completely ridiculous. It's nonsensical. It's against doctrine, facts, logic, and wisdom. There's a reason why it was never represented that way, because no psychophysical entity could be called that with a capital T, i.e. the absolute. Totally impossible. That which has a beginning in time has an end in time. There's no such thing as purification of the psychophysical. Completely ludicrous. And yet, you see all these people with a little, they got a Buddha statue, look at that. I got it made in India, look at that. What you have is a statue of a psychophysical being made of flesh and blood that pees and farts and eats. That is not that is not a representation of transcendence, the absolute, ultimate attainment. It's not a representation of wisdom. It's not a representation of anything other than that which is vile. There is no purification of the psychophysical. This is what it means to die to that self, like the dead man walking, the non-person, the Akimkana. It's the wiping away of that which includes wisdom, self-reflexive identity, true identity, which is transcendence, which is clarity of vision, which is understanding natural order. And it cannot exist any other way than this. So, this is the reason why I have nothing to do with religions. Well, religions are secularized metaphysics and have no connection to the original 99.99 times out of 100, including so-called Buddhism. Nothing to do with it. No. Nothing. Anyway, let me know if you have any questions. Send me an email. I love reading all your comments. Hope you liked this video. If you did, if you ever want to contact me, you can check out the description below the video. And I hope you have a lovely weekend. I forget, it's already Friday. Doesn't feel like Friday. I guess because it was a holiday week this week. Большое спасибо. Увидимся. Thank you so much. Пока. До свидания. Yeah. Hasta luego. Aloha. All that stuff. You know it. Goodbye.